everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Cynical Challenge podcast. My name is Grayson Knudsen, joining you from Edmonton, Alberta. Pleased to be joined, as always, by my co-host. First, we start in Saskatoon. First of all, Jeff, how is Emma? That's the most important thing. How's her teething going? And then I guess we can follow up with how you are doing.
Yeah, for sure. No, she's doing all right. She had her first two teeth, or two bottom middle teeth, breakthrough last week. So that's exciting. She hasn't had any other ones come through yet, but the drool level is going back up. So that means that there's probably going to be maybe one or two more teeth making an appearance here in the next couple of weeks. So she literally, I was holding her yesterday and she just completely soaked both of my shoulders. It was lovely.
Nice. The joys of parenting. JP, how are things in St. Albert on this fine Saturday morning?
Yeah, the same. It's too cold to go out. It's nice and early here, so we have to take care of our A-lister, who wants to record at 9 a.m. our time. But
nobody wants to record at 9 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, except for Jeff Salisbury.
Exactly. But
he's got the hour advantage.
Exactly it. But hey, he's got, we'll take care of him. It's good.
All right.
And I'm grateful.
Now, I'm assuming all you guys, when you first woke up, you played a recording of the national anthem, stood at attention, and honored our country, because that's what you should do before every thing that we do, right? Sporting events, concerts, everything like that. Obviously, this topic came to light again this week after Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban said that his team would no longer be playing the national anthem before games, as he felt the anthem didn't necessarily reflect the opinions of every single voice in the United States. Of course, it didn't come to light until they started allowing fans back in Dallas, that once they were allowed to allow vaccinated workers, they let them in for free. And that's when somebody noticed that they're not playing the anthem. Things in the United States are a little bit different than they are here. But what's your guys' stance on playing anthems before sporting events?
I can jump in, and I'm against it unless it's a national team event, and I'm against it. So, obviously when you put on the jersey of your national team, you hear that anthem, there's a source of national pride there for you, for sure. And you've achieved, if it's your first time hearing it, that's probably a very emotional moment when you're representing your country. So let's drop this into the CPL, and for two reasons. Number one, we're allowed 7 international players. So potentially there's 7 players that have no relationship to your anthem, and yet we play it anyhow, but we don't play theirs, but they're playing for your team. So it's not like we've gone through the list of everybody's anthem. So I don't like it for that reason. I also don't like it strictly on, just to be pragmatic, with it. We often play games, close to 0 degrees, early on in the season and then late on in the season. And to have players warm up 25 minutes, then to bring them inside and have them go back out, stand still in cold temperatures while you're hearing an anthem, worse than the NASL days when we had 2 anthems to get through. But players are just standing there. So, there's been games where it's been 17 minutes from the time that you've ended your warm up to the time the players kick a ball again, which it makes no sense for player health, even during that game in different temperatures. So I don't understand it. Don't know why we need to do it. And yeah.
I'm going to echo everything you basically just said there, Jeff. And the number one thing for me is let's take the Vancouver Whitecaps as an example. You have really Lucas Cavallini, who's likely to be on the pitch, maybe Russell Tybert and Max Crepeau if he's healthy. And that's probably your only actual Canadian content that's going to be on the pitch, at least to kick off the match, right? The rest of that team is either going to be from the US or from probably somewhere in South America. To be playing the Canadian anthem before games, play the US anthem before their games, it is a bizarre hyper patriotism that has seemed to have really purely come out of the US and has leaked up here through border osmosis, I'll call it. And it's hit the point where you have, now it's almost not only an unpatriotic, but then you're also having all of these military themed games. It extends beyond just the anthems. It even goes into having military themed events. And I'm not one that's very big on military side of things. Jeff, I mean, you come from a military background, so maybe this is not the best topic to be talking about with you, but it's just ultimately it's bizarre. I've never really understood how anthems and military events ever should be connected with club level sports. And yeah, on the national side of things, absolutely. I mean, but then you're playing the national anthem of both nations that are taking part in that event, right? You don't watch a match between Portugal and Spain and only hear the Portuguese anthem. You're going to hear both the anthems.
Yeah. And
that makes sense. It's a national event. It's countries. It's the teams of countries that are facing off. And so it makes sense in that regard. There's different examples too. I think we were chatting just through direct message a little earlier in the week about how the IIHF does it a little differently, where they play the anthem of the winning nation at the end of the game. And I'm fine with that as well. I mean, again, it's a national event. So yeah, I think there just needs to be someone with courage to actually say, look, this is really unnecessary and we don't need it. And I think you've provided a really excellent reason why, a practical reason why it should be abolished. I mean, it can potentially be harmful to the players if they're cooling down after having warmed up. So,
JP, now correct me if I'm wrong. Back when we were with FC Edmonton and right before everything got started in 2019, that first season, there was chatter that they weren't going to use the Canadian national anthem. And I remember the three of us who sat in the main room there at the FC Edmonton offices were pretty happy with that, because I just don't get it. Like it's strictly a North American thing. Like Sally said, you don't hear the English national anthem, God Save the Queen, before any Premier League matches or anywhere else in the world. They don't play the national anthems beforehand. But of course, right after Mark Cuban put out that statement saying that they weren't going to do it, the league the very next day came out and said, listen, no, everybody's going to play it because this is how it is. And I think the situation in the United States is a little bit different than here in Canada. There's a lot more volatility, a lot more hostility down there. But I mean, I just think it's unnecessary, and we all kind of agree on that. So
yeah, just a quick other thoughts of that, because it's you know what, I've got this kind of glow coming in here. It's almost like I'm taking this whole good, I'm taking this good Jeff thing like too far right now. But the interesting thing,
trying to brighten mine up there with the Caribbean vibes.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll be less cynical today on this show. We'll be less cynical. But the other interesting thing is the league came out with the anthem, and they've done a good job with it. I quite like the anthem, to be fair, but I think again we've missed an opportunity as a league with the sake of an anthem, a different type of anthem, to allow teams to create their own. Not the teams create their own, but allow fan bases to create an anthem for their team. More fan engagement, more emotion, more attachment, something that's there that's unique to each club. And we've so just a small little misstep there. So while we were talking anthems, I'll just kind of throw out that comment. I think that's a misstep by the league.
And it's interesting. I'm pretty sure every single person in Halifax just started salivating at the idea of being able to do that, because what club would have the biggest catalog to be able to choose from than the folks out in Halifax? I mean, holy smokes!
In the year of the sea shanty as well. So they could come out with something brilliant. But remember the El Clasico here, Gray? I had when Tommy came up to play the second leg, because he's such an Everton fan, I had us play "You'll Never Walk Alone" as our anthem. Yeah, and some of our fans didn't like it, but I didn't care. I mean, that's a great anthem.
No, that was all just you versus Tommy was what that was. The fans were a little bit confused, but whatever. It was kind of a funny little shot. So
there you go.
Speaking of national pride, national teams, the Canadian women's national team is going to be part of the SheBelieves Cup, which starts this upcoming Thursday, February 18th. They'll take on the Americans first, and then Argentina and Brazil as well. Japan was supposed to be in the tournament. They dropped out due to COVID going on. So Argentina will come up and play. They're all in the United States, all four of these teams. And Canada's been there, I believe, since the 25th, holding a camp. So our first look at the women's team under Bev Priestman, Sally, what are you expecting from these three matchups against North and South American clubs?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I think is important to acknowledge is that we're going to be missing three key players at minimum. We're going to be missing Buchanan, Ashley Lawrence, and Jordan Heidema. Because the French league isn't allowing their clubs to release players at the moment due to, I believe it's a French national COVID policy. They're trying to limit the amount of people that are coming in and out of the country, which makes complete sense. And so right there, we're losing our star center back, assuming we played Lawrence at fullback again or wing back, we're losing that. And then Haidema is one of our top strikers. So we've basically lost players sort of in all three areas of the pitch that are pretty important to us. So we're coming in at honestly a bit of a disadvantage in that regard. I mean, on the other side of the sword, it is going to allow some younger players to see some minutes. So I don't really have any expectations of the team at this tournament in the sense of, our first match is up against the Yanks. So, I mean, you're taking on the number one team in the world with 3 times, maybe 4 times the depth, player depth that our program has. So that's a really difficult match right out of the gate. So, if we get anything from that match, it'll be a miracle in my opinion. And Jamie, you can make a mug for that if you want. There's a little personal shout somewhere, the Jamie McLeod. Then we're up against Argentina and Brazil. The Argentina match, that we should be winning that game still, I think. I mean, obviously the South American countries are making large strides in their women's programs. Now they're actually focusing lots of resources. Brazil's kind of always been there. They've had X factor players for as long as I can remember. How old is Marta now? Is she in her 80s at this point? Like,
she's still playing.
Exactly. She's only been voted Women's Player of the Year once every 5 years, I think, for the last 30 years. So, it's that Brazil match will be the really crucial game, I think, for us to really see where we are. Are we still on par with Brazil? Has the program fallen behind a little bit? And before I let Good Jeff cut in, I just want to mention that there were two members of the Canada Soccer staff that have moved on from the women's program. First, we had Rhiannon Wilkinson leaving to join the staff of the England women's national team. And then just a day or two ago, Carmelina Moscato announced that she's taking over as head of the Bahamas?
Yeah, it's Bahamas. Yeah.
Yeah, the women's national team with the Bahamas, which, I mean, awesome. Good for her. She landed a job in football in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't get any better than that. How do I land a job in the Caribbean in football?
The dream. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The dream.
Before JP steps in, just wanted to clarify some of the French release. It is a French rule, even though this does fall in the FIFA calendar for women. So teams are required to release players for this tournament. There is a clause that states that if your country has quarantine rules upon return, you don't have to release players. And France does have a quarantine period when players come back into France. So they can go through that loophole. I know the Americans are missing a couple players that way too. Brazil, I think, is missing Formiga and another player. I don't think Argentina is affected, but just to clarify there. So it's a tough blow for us to not have those 3 players with us. But again, opportunities for younger players, especially in a tournament where it's not super important, the results, really. It's just 3 matches against some pretty decent competition to get our team back together before Olympic qualifying. On the corner, JP.
No, I think it's a great way to come in for Bev Priestman, quite honestly. It's a chance. So because you're missing some top end players here, number one, probably takes a bit of pressure off your first games as the new manager. So the expectations might drop a little bit. So that's a nice way to come in to a new program, for a manager for sure. So the second piece of that is that now it also gives her a chance to look at the depth of the squad, like you said, Jeff. So for me, it's the advantage, for this is those 2 things. 1, pressure is probably off. 2, you look at the depth of your team and some of these new players that you'll need going forward, as this team kind of transforms under Bev's leadership. So great way to start, her new career.
Yeah, I should mention too that the next time Sophie Schmidt steps on the pitch, it'll be her 200th cap for the women. Somebody who doesn't always get a lot of attention, but has always been there for the national team. And you can catch all the matches Thursday, Saturday, and then I believe it's Wednesday. They're all on One Soccer for those of you who have a subscription, or you can find a nice dodgy stream as we used to do in the Voyagers camp all the time. when it comes to finding national team matches.
And Sophie, Abbotsford Soccer Club, developed by worked with one Colin Miller when she was young. So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting also. I didn't want to forget to mention, it'll be good to finally hopefully see both Bianca St. George and Evelyn. Is it Viens? Viens?
I'm not sure how to say her French, so we're probably saying it wrong anyway, but
yeah, we'll say Viens for now, and Carolyn Duthie can correct us on Twitter. But it'll be good to see that those two. Hopefully, they see lots of minutes, because Evelyn seems to be making big strides in her career, which is excellent. So,
yeah, absolutely, looking forward to that as well. So, why don't we jump now to some Canadian Premier League news? A little bit of a quieter week this week in the CPL in terms of signings, mostly re-signings. I'll list off the moves from this past week, and then Sally, you can go first, followed by JP. Just pick one and comment on it, kind of thing. We had Atletico Ottawa bring back Tevin Shaw. They also re-signed Shaw Bernardino, a couple of midfielders there for Atletico Ottawa. Halifax Wanderers signed Samuel Salter, a new face for the Wanderers. Forge made a lot of re-signings. Johnny Grant, David Chouanier, Max Tissot, Monty Mosen, and Bajman, the goalkeeper. Valor bringing back Daryl Fordyce. Dazzy gets another crack with Rob Gale's squad, and then FC Edmonton adding Thomas Giraldo on loan from CF Montreal, someone who played with the national U, set up the U17s, I believe. Sally, which would you like to chat about there of that group?
Yeah, I wanted to chat about Bernardino coming into Ottawa. He'd been signed before last season, but wasn't able to feature for them in PEI. Just kind of due to the nature of how everything went with last season, but it will be an interesting piece in their midfield. So I'm curious if he'll bring enough to replace a player of the caliber of Acuna. I still think Ottawa is going to be chasing the ghost of Acuna, if you will, this entire season, just because he was so heads and tails the best player in the league. It was unreal. But they're bringing in some good pieces now. They're expected to announce a whole plethora of signings over the next couple of weeks, at least, if we can believe what their social media channels have been saying. So, but yeah, I mean, you have a guy coming in, another international, and quite frankly, the internationals make all the difference in this league, which shouldn't really be surprising. But hopefully, they will find a player that will be able to bring that creativeness that they might be lacking from the loss of Acuna. So that was the one that really caught my attention. And a lot of the fans out of Ottawa, who I follow on Twitter, have been talking him up quite a bit, and they're really excited to see what he's going to be able to bring. So that's a player that, might be worth a flyer in Theo Gautier's CPL fantasy league.
There you go. JP?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just the signing of Giraldo from Montreal, from FC Edmonton. And I only say that. So I think a young player, a lot of potential is what I understand. Skilled player, probably fits what Alan's looking to do, the way he wants to play. So obviously I like it for that reason. And again, he's made a choice here for the benefit of the squad. So he'll know his squad better than I do, looking from the outside. But, for me, it's just a curious one, only in that this is a club that's been one of the few programs with an academy. The U20s, which I'm not sure where that U20 program is at today, where it ends up. However, there was a lot of players there. There was a player, a 16-year-old, I was going to bring to PEI with me, but it didn't work out. His negative test the morning of our flight, I guess, wasn't enough to validate that he was negative. And probably would have been the safest one to get on a flight. But yeah, he was restricted from coming to PEI because of a COVID test. And it's unfortunate because at 16 years old, he would have got some minutes, left-footed central mid. So for me, it's just that. It's that balance of looking what you're after. You're bringing in a Montreal Impact Academy player. That is, again, I believe he is signed to a first-team contract, though, with Montreal, yes, versus... Yep. Looking internally at maybe some of the players here, which, to be fair to Alan, he probably hasn't had a chance to see the players here either, with COVID shutting down before he got here. So he might not know what's in the, what's down the line here at this club. But for me, it's interesting just based on that.
Yeah, the Giraldo thing too is a full season loan with no recall option. So he's going to be with the Eddies for the entire campaign. Whereas I think the other two players they loaned out, they do have option to recall at any time for CF Montreal. So I like that Forge continues to keep that core together. Bringing back Max Tissot is big. Chouanier as well. Kind of keeps, what Bobby was building, keeps that together. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. And obviously a big move for Anthony Novak as well, signing overseas in Europe. So that's a big piece that Forge is going to have to try and replace. So keeping some of the other core together is a good move on top.
Have either of you heard if that Novak move over to Portugal is an actual permanent, or is he just over there until the CPL season kicks off? I actually haven't seen any clarification on that, and I don't know if there's even been any word from Forge yet regarding that move. So
I feel like Forge would have addressed it if it was a loan. So it feels like a transfer to me, but again, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't read more into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I even called it on one of our earlier episodes that Novak is probably the number one player from the CPL that I was surprised hadn't had a look in Europe yet. So seeing him sign on overseas is just, well, it's no surprise. I mean, I think he's going to flourish over there, and it's going to have European eyes on him now as well. I can't recall. I don't know if either of you can recall how old he is.
26, I believe.
26. So he's in his prime. So he'll probably have, if he manages to stick, he'll probably have a few years over there, probably make some decent coin, and then maybe come back and sign on with Forge again and lead them for another little dynasty run.
Right. I think you've tipped them off. I think it's great that our show is being watched in Portugal and you've tipped somebody off there. So well done to you, Jeff, in this show. Great.
Yeah. Who knew?
If you pump the tires enough, somebody will definitely catch on. JP, you mentioned some academy talk, and I know it's a topic we've wanted to get to for a little while. It's something obviously that's near and dear to your heart, having worked with FC Edmonton's U20s for, well, the better part of this past decade, before moving on to Scottish here. When it comes to academies, it seems like the CanPL is maybe a little bit hesitant. And we've talked about what their deal is with some of the outside scouting sources and bringing in youth internationals. What kind of an impact is this going to have on the league? And should the league be looking at trying to set up academies and establish them and create maybe some kind of, CanPL second division or CanPL academy division?
Well, 100%. That should have happened right when the league started. I thought, you look at, there's a belief in some, certainly at the league office, that academies are just, essentially a waste of money, that you're throwing money away with an academy. They don't turn out players. They don't bring in player transfer money to validate the cost of an academy. We ran the FC Edmonton Academy from 2012 when I got to start that with Paul Kelly at FC Edmonton. We ran that on a fairly decent budget, and it's a budget that is sustainable. And so I know the numbers can work to run an academy in this country, depending on the age groups, and fully funded as well. So there's reasons for that, and there's reasons why I think the business model and the idea that academies are bad, I think versus the direction they've taken, I think it's a poor business model, because so now we've got the 21st Club, which again, great program being led by a really good, Oliver Gage in the league office. He's switched on, so he knows his stuff. So I'm not criticizing the program. I'm not criticizing, the rationale for the 21st Club, but the idea that you're going to bring in international players, at 22, 23 years old, that have been in their countries playing for all these years and have had way more eyes on them in their own countries by clubs in that country than we've had eyes on them. But the idea that these will be the players that we bring in and have here in the CPL for a couple of years and then sell to make, an extra source of revenue, for example, for the owners, I'm not sure that belief is well placed. Versus, if international clubs are coming to Canada to look for players, they're coming here to find the next Alfonso. They're coming here to find the next Jonathan David. Or some of our young female players now with the female game taking off here. That's who they're coming to Canada to find. They're not coming to Canada to find their own players that they've had eyes on for the last 7 years, as these players have developed in their countries. So this is kind of where I think that the thinking is flawed. We need to develop our own players here, because that's where the market is. If you're going to, so let's take it back to the States. I mean, there was research done, and I know that there's a certain paper that was written many years ago about MLS academies that essentially said MLS shouldn't have academies either because they're a waste of money. And it's a great thing today for Philadelphia Union. It's a great thing today for FC Dallas that they ignored that paper and they've built these academies, because now you're starting to see what academies do anywhere around the world. And not only will they develop players for your first team, so you look at that Philadelphia Union team, and half of their players, half of their starters, anyhow, some of their key players, all homegrown, all through their program. And so they went the slow route. They didn't come and buy a team, and buy international stars like the LA teams have done, or say Atlanta when they came in. They went the long route. They built through an academy system, and now top program with these young players that are exciting. They play different, and they've now I believe they've made in the last year $12 million in player sales without sell-on fees that'll come with that, and without some of the incentives. $12 million. Well, $12 million covers the cost of the Philadelphia Union Academy for 2 years, and their academy's full, including school. So they spend big money on it. I mean, I can tell you could run an academy, in the CPL for. I won't say the figure to embarrass anybody, but it's nowhere near that. I have to tell you, it's actually quite affordable. FC Dallas, some of their player sales that they've been making, you look at through Alphonso Davies, that Vancouver can claim as homegrown, make that sale. I mean, that paid for Vancouver Whitecaps Academy for how many years, that one sale. So this is what if North America is going to get into the player transfer market as another source of revenue, it's through North American players. You're seeing it in Philadelphia, you're seeing it in Dallas, you've seen it in Vancouver. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll let you guys jump in. I've got more thoughts to add into this, but I'll let you guys jump in with your opinions here.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions, or one of the thoughts that I've really been mulling over is at what age? So personally, I'm in favor, just like you are, of having academies. I think academies need to exist in the CPL, because I agree, we need to be developing our own players. This notion that you're going to be able to bring in young internationals to sell on for big profits, I think that's not only unproven, but I think that probably just came out of some scholarly paper that is more hopeful than anything. So what I've been wondering is, at what age should players start getting into the stream of the professional club? And maybe you'll be able to comment on this, Jeff, because I think the other side of that question too is at what age does football development, or does a player start to develop as a footballer? What age is that where a player actually starts to develop as a footballer? Is it as young as, under 9, under 8? Like, is it a 6, 7, 8-year-old? I know a lot of people talk about how it's more around that range of kind of the 12, 13, at the point of, or just post puberty, which makes sense. But I wonder, because where I'm coming at this from is where, we with Canadian football development, we have always seemed to only be able to develop a player that hits this plateau. You know what I mean? They kind of get to here. They never get up to here. I mean, Alphonso Davies is a freak of nature, quite frankly. I mean, it was a pure roll of the dice that a player like him would come out of this country. I mean, it's something that comes out of the FIFA 15 academy system. If you've ever played that game, he is that 1 in a million platinum player that happens to pop up in an academy. So I guess really, I'm in favor of academies. I believe they do need to happen. And I think it's short-sightedness that the league seems to be scoffing at the idea. But at the same time, I wonder, where should the CPL clubs, how far down should the CPL clubs reach go? What age group should it start at? And how far should that stream go? Because I know kind of the way that I've heard from some of the other clubs is they just want to have partnerships with the local youth soccer organizations. And that's fine. That's good. I mean, obviously they need to have those. I mean, it's part of building a healthy ecosystem for the game in their city, in their region. But at the same time, I think history has shown that our youth soccer programs really aren't doing a good enough job of developing players to be ready for the professional game internationally. So there needs to be more resources, or a body of greater resources put into developing our players so that that plateau is no longer here, but it gets raised up to that international quality level, right? So I want to toss this back to you, Jeff, and hear your thoughts. What age group should a CPL academy start at? What age should a player be when they first get into that environment? And should it be younger than should it be a prepubescent age that maybe CPL clubs start to already have some connection into?
Yeah. Okay. Well, quickly, it doesn't need to be too young, and a message I would send to any academy there that is selling their elite U8, U9, U10 program. Stop stealing money. Just end that right now. You are not developing any elite soccer player at 8, 9, 10 years old. So give the money back to the families that have spent on your program. We're a late specialization sport. The sport, it's a late, so it's not early. It's not gymnastics, and it's not these other things where you have to get in early and specialize early. We are a late specialization sport. So right off the bat, you know that anything before U12, you don't need to do at the academy level professionally at all. Stay away from it. Get as many players playing the game as possible when they're young, in a good environment, and that doesn't need to be a pro environment. France, I believe, has changed some of their rules where they really don't want players leaving their home areas until the age of 15, is what I've heard. And I think 15 is an okay age, 15, 16. I don't think you need to go earlier than that. I don't think players need to leave home before 15 years of age. I think there's some benefits to being in a home environment. Some might benefit from a new home environment. Fair play, individual situations. So, okay. But for let's just say a general number, a majority, I think you're better off being at home and developing in your own social groups with people in your area, with your family. There's benefits to that, and just the well-being and the kind of the psychosocial side of a player's development that would benefit them being at home longer. So for me, you're looking at that 16, 17, the 15, 16 range is probably an area that you'd want to start in. Now, though, when you flip it over, so, I mean, great, because I get to talk about Scottish here for a second. So, for example, we're a club that already has identified that there's just simply a gap, in that kind of 16 to 19, 20-year-old range. And if, depending on what happens with FC Edmonton's U20 Academy, if that doesn't exist anymore, going forward, we know that we're going to be able to fill that gap now based on the programming we're about to be announcing in the next couple of weeks. So I won't blow it. No spoiler, but we've got some stuff happening at our club, for example, that, if clubs do what we're going to be doing, then yeah, can you get by without the pro club having its own program? For sure, in that city. Going back though, for teams to develop their own, it goes back to then, and maybe Grayson, you want to jump in here, because you've covered the university game quite a bit, but there's a big difference in developing a player full-time in a professional academy versus a player being a university player, which is great. Yeah. So no one come at me now. Oh, you're anti. I'm not. I'm pro university. I'm in school myself, so big fan. But there's a difference in a player developing in a university environment, training 4 months of the year, really hard, versus a professional academy, 10 months of the year. But Gray, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you just said it right there. University program, fantastic. Get your schooling, do all that. But again, you're only playing for September, October, November. At least here in Canada with the U Sports program, because we just don't have the time of year to play, and they don't play again in the spring. I know U of A, a lot of their players play Major League with the green and gold and that kind of thing. So there's other opportunities, but it's not in the same program. Whereas if you find yourself, filtering through, just say, for example, the FC Edmonton program, they had U16, U18, U20, and you kind of can build your way up. The structure, the play style, you kind of learn that. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how the first team plays, it's up for debate. If you want the whole system to play the exact same style, is, again, up for debate. But at the same time, you can move along nicely. You're being seen all the way from the top down. Just give yourself more opportunities in that sense. And I know a lot of the coaching staffs on these academies, they'll look at players and say, maybe you're not a good fit here. Maybe we can move you here. Maybe we can, do something else. Just keep their options open. Or maybe they'll suggest that, hey, you know what? Go to school for a couple of years and we'll see where you develop and that kind of thing. So I definitely think there's an opportunity. And I know it's been brought up that cost is a bit of a concern, but when you're paying to bring in international youth players, paying for their housing, and doing all that stuff. If you bring in 3 of those compared to, 20 academy players, is the cost not the same? And then you're looking to sell on. Okay, well, you have 3 players here to sell on, and you have a potential for, let's move, even half a dozen, 10 players over here. What's going to make you more money? And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but cost shouldn't matter. It's not about the cost of the academy. It's about giving all of these kids in your community somewhere to play, somewhere to develop, give them an opportunity to even, earn a scholarship, or give them the opportunity to, progress in their career. Maybe they make a move, a transfer. I know we've seen lots of kids come through Edmonton who've gone into Vancouver Whitecaps Academy, more eyes on them, a bigger opportunity. And I know, JP, like, you've been fine with that. You've encouraged kids to go to Vancouver, go to an MLS level academy, take that next step. It's not about keeping kids in the city. It's about giving them every single opportunity, chance to grow, whether, again, it's through the first team in the city, through an opportunity elsewhere, or earn yourself a scholarship. The academies, I think, are just vital if you want to identify that 16 to 20-year-old age group, the next generation of Canadian Premier League players.
Yeah, and just quick, because you mentioned cost, and so the cost of the club, there is that, and I think academies should be full-time. The majority of MLS academies are full-time. I believe it's only DC United and Minnesota that have 4 pay programs. For me, that doesn't count as a pro academy when they do that. So I've been looking more at, because the MLS teams have embraced academies now. You see that, and I think they're full in. There was a time where what's his name? The president, what's MLS? Don.
Garber. Don Garber.
Yeah, thank you. My goodness, see, Jeff, you get me up at 9 a.m. But there was a time where he had some real concerns because the money going into academies, they weren't selling. So he said, for this to play off, they have to start becoming a selling nation. Well, they've become a selling nation now. You look at the amount of American players going overseas that are young and doing very, very well. So the United States is now a selling nation, but it took 7-8 years of the academies to really start to find themselves and start to develop these top end talent. And that happened. The other thing, so when I'm looking down at the States, because they've embraced it now, against the advice of so many that academies never pay off, but they've done that. And now you've got Berhalter, for example, saying that academies are a must for MLS teams, that you have essentially your own farm system, which is foreign in North American sport, to develop your own. Because we've used the NCAA draft in whatever sport it's been. Hockey probably a bit closer, maybe, to at least having an idea on the younger players coming up. But point being, though, because they've jumped in, so Berhalter says this. The other issue then in the States, when you look at, so why a pro academy? Why is it important, for the development of the game? And part of it is that costing, but now not the costing to the club, the costing to the individual players. A pro academy, for the most part, is a free program. So no matter what your socioeconomic status is as a young player, they'll, if you're good enough, they're going to find you. For example, in Philadelphia, they're going to find you because of their scouting network now. Is there's no stone left unturned is kind of what they're going with. Versus these other private programs, these pay programs in the States, these traveling kind of squads and clubs that they have, but they're $5,000 American per year on average. So they limit the ability for some players to make it to that level. The other difference is in a pro academy versus other programs is every other program is still to win. Ontario League One, brilliant, really good program. PLS, fantastic. But let's not kid ourselves. Those programs are now designed for one thing, to get to Canada, or Canadian Championship berth. They're trying to win. They're not trying to develop the next Canadian players. They want to win with their program. They will develop players, of course, but that's not their main goal. A pro academy has no requirement to win a game. No requirement.
Yeah.
It's to develop players. And there's a big difference when you look at the development of a child coming through on what is the end goal. Is it development, or is it winning a trophy, making club nationals? I mean, these are all things that hold back development for many players. So Jeff, I don't know what your thoughts are there, but I'll jump it over to you as I let my dog out.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. I mean, it's it's not necessarily up to a league to it's not up to a league to develop a player. It's up to the club and what the club's ethos is towards that. So Yeah, I mean, what we could hope for is that we see the expansion of that third tier of the Canadian football pyramid. So that League One Ontario, PLSQ, BC League One, we see the expansion of that right across the country. Maybe like an Atlantic Regional League and a Prairie Regional, and then we see the clubs involved there essentially have an academy system beneath their first teams. So and in the CPL, obviously having academies league wide, that maybe would be, you'd create a little bit of competition perhaps within the entire academy ecosystem, which isn't necessarily bad as long as it's the system isn't suddenly turned into this is about winning rather than about developing 100%. I just, it's very worrisome, and it's only one of many things about the CPL that are becoming very worrisome in the way that things are being run. It's very worrisome that there seems to be this staunch position against having academies, that academies are somehow going to be nothing but a money pit and that the players are never going to be worth anything. I think we've all had a lot of hopes for what this league was going to bring, but now the league seems to be going against a lot of those hopes. So we can only hope that maybe there's some new leadership sometime in the near future that is going to see things a little bit differently, more along the lines of what we've been talking about, and we'll reevaluate the need for having academy systems within the league.
Well, I mean, obviously, it would be great if everybody had an academy. That would be development of your own players. Where would you like, let's say in the future, everybody has an academy, all the teams do. Where would you like to see them play? Would you like to see kind of a nationwide academy league where maybe the academy team travels with the first team and then they kind of play the same team that, so like if FC Edmonton played Pacific, the Edmonton Academy would travel as well, and the academies would play prior to, after the match, or whatever, however it works? Or would you rather see like FC Edmonton's and Cavalry's U20s played in Alberta Major Soccer League, or some tier, like if Forge and York through their academies in League One Ontario and Ottawa had theirs in PLSQ and that type of thing? What do you guys like in terms of where these kids should play, and how many matches are important, and or are matches important at all for these academy kids? JP, I think I'll throw to you first.
Yeah, I think that any academy league should be regional. Regionalized. I mean, the size of our country, travel is prohibitive. I mean, the cost of travel is prohibitive to new sporting ventures starting up in our country. So then you add that, I would prefer to see professional female program that got attached with the current men's team, and they would travel together. So you'd have like a home, you'd have like every game would be a double header, and one team plays in the next. I mean, I'd rather see that than the academies traveling. But for the academy stuff, I'd like to see something regional. Again, it would keep costs down. You could just think about if you go back the last many years at Clark Stadium, what was the biggest FC Edmonton draw fan-wise? Remember what game that was?
It was the game against Foothills.
With our U20s.
Yeah.
Our U20s had the biggest fan attendance of any game at for FC Edmonton in the last probably 5 or 6 years. And it was our U20s. It was free, but people came.
Yeah, no, that's
people
true.
Came. I mean, because an FC Edmonton game is not expensive anyhow, but people came to it, but they came to it to watch the U20s play. And so so people are interested, there's something there with that, but it's anyhow, I'll never forget that. But yeah, regional makes sense. You can bust to games, you can keep the cost down, and there is some excitement building. I mean, FC Edmonton and Calgary have kind of shown the way how to develop, U20 players with that program playing in the AMSL, and people, also forget how much we use the AMSL to develop players like Prince and Marcus. When they weren't getting enough minutes in the first team, they were getting, as professional players, they were getting first team. They were getting a lot of minutes playing with our AMSL side as part of that relationship with Alberta Major Soccer League. So there's certainly ways to do it and keep costs down.
Well, I just before I jump in on my full thoughts on things, I just want to mention I disagree with having the double header with the women's team.
I get that. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they need to stand on their own 2 feet, but that's a topic for another day.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but so I think I will fully agree with you that it needs to be regionalized. And I mean, I'm just going to do a very pie in the sky thought for a moment again, and looking at, what it could be like if there was that full tier 3 regionalized league system across the country. I mean, you could have, let's say 10 or a dozen clubs playing in each regional league, which is basically what you have in PLSQ and League One Ontario. In fact, I think League One Ontario is even larger than that at this point. They're closing in on
again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're closing in on 20 clubs, I think, at this point. I mean, Ontario is in its own ecosystem because of the concentration of population, blah, 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 blah. So we can't really use them. But what I'm thinking is, let's just look at a Prairie Regional League, tier 3 league for a second. Let's say you have 10 clubs in it, and they're each running their own academy system. You have a club in Saskatoon, a club in Regina, a club in Edmonton, and Calgary, maybe another one in a larger Alberta center like Lethbridge or Red Deer. You have Winnipeg, maybe one in Brandon, so we have these teams, and you have academies that are operating in those cities. Plus maybe you have a Saskatchewan CPL club operating out of Saskatoon, let's say Prairieland Park.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
It's actually called Prairieland Park?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Prairieland Park is the name. It's the exhibition grounds. Yeah.
Of course
Park.
it is.
It is, yeah. So anyway, and that club has an academy as well. So you have a lot of academies that are in a decently concentrated geographical region. I mean, yeah, Saskatoon to Winnipeg is 10 hours driving. Calgary to Winnipeg, my God, what is that? Basically 20 hours. So, I mean, yeah, we're getting a little crazy. That's probably a flight in there. So maybe it's a little bit cost prohibitive in that regard, but you maybe play in like a centralized spot, Again, this is all pie in the sky, but the point I'm trying to get to is that you would then have a good level of play, a professionalized level of play for these developing players coming together, playing games, all with the goal of developing into a player that the first team feels is going to benefit their team, to bring them into the full squad. And it creates that football development ecosystem that this country just does not have right now. And we need it badly. I mean, we can't keep crossing our fingers that an Alfonso Davies, a Jonathan David, a Lucas Cavallini, a Jonathan Osorio, that they're just going to keep popping up at random here and there and there and there. BC and Ontario aren't always going to be able to generate these world-class footballers, and Alberta for that matter, a little bit Quebec too. But I mean, we need to start spreading it around the nation too. So I think we need to shoot for the stars if we ever want to land on the moon.
Get that off a motivational poster.
How's that? Do you like that?
Seriously, like put a photo of a beach behind this man. Look at his attitude changes here. The whole demeanor is different.
I think too, when you mention getting academies all across the country, I think players get recognized. Let's look at, again, the men's national team, women's national team. The majority of the players are coming from BC, Ontario, and Quebec. You get the odd, player from somewhere else scattered in there. And I mean, yeah, again, population concentration, all that stuff is obviously in those three provinces for the most part. But by casting a wide net of academies across the country, nobody's going to fall through. And I mean, again, you might not get as many coming from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, places like that. But at least those players can see that there's a pathway. They can see that there's an opportunity to go to the next level and, maybe to become a big star.
Yeah, I think we'd be surprised, guys. Yeah, but truly, we'd be surprised if you put players. So compare the FC Edmonton Academy and our budget and what we did here, just taking local players strictly out of Edmonton. We had one or two that moved here to be in the program that actually moved to Edmonton for the program. But I think there's only 2 or 3 of those throughout my time. But if you put players in the right environment, you'll be surprised what they can do. And we've taken this academy of ours to Toronto. We've played against TFC. We've yet to lose a game, against TFC. With our academy program, and you look at different resources available to us versus them. And it's not about program versus program, because when I say we didn't lose a game, we didn't win a game. We might have won one, What was important though is we performed, we played, and we played as well as they played. That's what was important out of those events. We've taken a younger group in the past to compete in a Canadian kind of showcase event where we had to play the Whitecaps, Montreal, and Toronto, and we lost every game 1-0 to those teams. But we performed with them, and our kids could play with them. Without these programs in place, we're going to miss a lot of kids. And without these programs in place, kids aren't getting in the right environments then to receive dedicated development training. I'm not saying there's not good programs out there. There's a lot of good programs. We've got a lot of good programs in Edmonton that are not FC Edmonton. Back in the day, there's a lot. Point is though, when you have dedicated development programming, with everything's been laid out for these players. You know where you want to get to as far as their development goes. You give them more. They train more often. They have more sports science. They have more strength conditioning. They have access to resources that will help them individually within a team game. And so that's what it's about for me. Create more of these environments for players to develop, and players from across this country, including Saskatchewan, will have a chance to develop and perform against anybody else in the nation, whether it's from Ontario, Quebec, or BC or Alberta. Honestly, that's my belief.
Yeah, I mean, we can all hope that eventually this becomes a thing, but we're getting to be a little bit long here, boys. So that seems a good positive place to leave things off. Let's hope that the continuation of the academies across the country continues to build, and CPL teams recognize the need for it. So, Sally, why don't you tell us where we can find you online so we can heckle you and bug you about being from Saskatoon?
Yeah, for sure. So as always, you can find me on Twitter at Jeff D. Salisbury. I have a CPL logo that's done up in SK Selects colors, the gold, green, and well, we chose black because you can't really use white on a white background. But so we have, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm always kind of lurking around on the CPL fan groups on Facebook, on the Voyageurs Facebook, even on the Discord channel that John Eden and a couple of the guys started. So if you haven't gotten on the CPL Discord, get on there because there's really good discussions happening all the time. And yeah, other than those two, that's really it.
JP, where can we find you?
I am Jeff_Paulus.
That's on Twitter, only Twitter.
Just Twitter.
There you go. And I am at Grayson Knutson. The show itself at the Cynical Chow 1 on Twitter. You can search us up on YouTube as well and find the audio only podcast version on all your favorite catchers, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. Gentlemen, always a pleasure to talk some football with you. Let's do it again real soon.
Great. Everyone have a great day.
Even earlier in the morning next time.
Thanks.
No chance.